Tonight, we'll take you to visit a city that is normally only seen by Muslim pilgrims to Mecca. We'll be visiting the port city of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Now, during the Middle Ages, the Arabs ruled most of the Western world, most of the known Western world, ranging all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to Central Asia. Those who were in Spain and Portugal and nearby North Africa were better known as Moors. The rest of the Arabs were generally referred to as Saracens. Now, Daewoo athletic team are known as the Saracens, and perhaps that's why he's so interested in tonight's program.
Well, not exactly, Dad. I'm just interested in seeing Arabia again. In tonight's film, you'll get a chance to see what a young, wealthy sheikh looks like. No, I haven't mispronounced it. The word is really sheikh and not chic. But I guess you'll be able to say that you'll see the sheikh of Araby.
Come to think of it, in tonight's film, you'll be seeing a dance in a country right near Arabia, and that dance could be referred to as the Sheikh of Araby, too. Well, here we have a young lady who is from Iceland, but nevertheless finds herself quite at home in hot countries like Saudi Arabia. Now, Hadla, would you do the honors and start tonight's program?
Oh, certainly has. I'm sure that most of you know that the center of Arabia is quite desolate and really a desert. But you have no idea how really desolate it is till you fly over it. And here's what our view looked like from a modern jet in which we were passing over Arabia.
They must strictly to local custom and wear the traditionally black robes of purdah any time they go out of their homes. No Arab woman would be permitted to appear in public without these all-covering black robes and a face veil. The emotional religious conservatives might beat an unveiled Arab woman, we were told, although they didn't mind a foreign woman like me going about unveiled. Some progress has been made, I noticed, because I even saw one woman in robes who was wearing a short skirt and even high heels, but was still veiled.
That's really unusual. That's progress. Go ahead.
When an obviously modern woman like this reaches her home, she loses no time in throwing off her veils and showing that underneath she wears completely up-to-date clothing. No doubt as she tends her flower garden, she hopes that by the time her daughter grows up, this old system of being required to wear veils in public will have died out.
But it hasn't died out now, and she must still wear veils if she goes out into public or if she's really endangering herself. So this is the old Saudi Arabia and the new.
We were told in no unmistakable terms that we would never be permitted to enter the holy city of Mecca, since only Muslims are allowed to enter. But we decided to drive out that way anyway to see how far we would get before we were halted.
And he knew immediately what had happened. They had started to drill many wells in Jeddah for the number of pilgrims who were coming there, and the water was now disappearing, going to Jeddah instead of here.
There's still enough water, however, at the Wadi Fatima to grow some crops, and I got out of that comfortable car to see what was being produced. This turned out to be okra, which some of you know as gumbo, a vegetable product. It's a member of the mallow family, which includes cotton, strangely enough. Nearby, we were shown a strange large pod by the Arabian man who was accompanying us, and while I cannot vouch for the factualness of what he told us, he said that this is a variation of the okra plant, which is called the velvet wheat. It yields a product called China jute, and its interior seemed to be like the body of a small bird, almost as if it had feathers.
You could almost imagine those as feathers, but that's the inside of that plant he was showing us. Now, this is all they're able to grow at Wadi.
Now we came up against one of the great problems of filming in desert countries, sand. A minor sandstorm came up, but we felt we had to keep on filming. Here's what it looked like.
Well, being a cameraman, it's a terrible thing to see the wind start to blow that sand, and you know it's going to be getting into your camera, but you do have to continue to film. And so we continued to film, even though the sand devils were going all around us. This is what it's like there out in the desert. We were especially anxious to get some scenes of the people out in the desert areas, and we were very lucky because we found some of the desert nomads. Here they are. And even they can hardly keep the sand out of their eyes. They greet each other with the 2 kisses on the cheek like that. Now, these gentlemen here are really nomads, and they always will carry a jimbia, the curved dagger. Notice that has a wooden handle there. These are men of the Bedouin tribes. The old gentleman also had a jimbia, you'll notice. And out here, you see the wind just blowing in their faces. Now, we had a wonderful chance there because while we were out there, we heard this noise. And some of the men had gotten into their finest costumes of the olden days. Now, they would never normally dress like this if they were going out to battle, but this was a reminder of the olden days when the Arabians ruled the known Western world from the Atlantic to the Central Asia. And they used to sweep across the plains this way. This was a little touch of the olden days in their olden costumes, waving their scimitars.
They would have been happy to continue for hours, but we wanted to get on, so we thanked them and said goodbye, then walked over to where the camels had been gathered together for the night. There must have been 100 of them, and as we started to take some close-ups, we saw some camels energetically chewing their evening meal, and I do mean energetically. I'm sure we looked just as funny to that camel as it did to us, because as we watched, it certainly whispered to its friend, "Aren't they the silliest humans you've ever seen?"
Yes, Mabel, I sure think so.
Have you ever noticed how some people who chew gum violently without realizing it? Does this remind you of them?
Well, some of you who chew gum this way will never do it again once you see how you possibly look. But this is how camels chew their meals. There you go, on one side and then the other. Well, we enjoyed watching the camels, but had to get back. We're back on the good road again, heading back towards Jeddah, going past little villages and always a mosque. This, of course, is a Muslim country, almost 99.9%. But here is the city of Jeddah ahead of us. It's amazing as you enter on this modern road with those modern lights. You see that the old buildings are starting to be torn down. These are still old buildings, and the modern ones are going up. In fact, if you want to do shopping in Jeddah, you can go today in one of these little minibuses. If you don't have a car, these are the usual forms of buses. There isn't an old car in all of Jeddah, I'm sure, because the minute they start to wear out, they just discard them. They never pick them up. Always have money enough to buy new cars. Or you go shopping in a beautiful, modern building like this. So they buy cars from all over the world, and you'll just really see lots of cars in the streets there. However, many, many people, especially the natives of the country, can't afford to go into shops like this, and they still go to the souks, the old bazaars. And we went down there towards the latter part of the day. The crowds begin to gather. In the daytime, you seldom see anybody out. It's too hot. But now you see the people gathering around the bazaars to chat and to shop. We decided to go in.
We went on foot through the bazaars. I was the only non-Muslim woman in the entire area, and it was a little eerie to realize that fact. But off we went down the covered streets. These shops all sell everyday needs of the people. There were no luxury items or souvenirs to be seen. We stopped here to find out what was being sold here and learned that it was a sort of sweet, something like rock candy, we were told.
We just looked, didn't sample it.
Each time we stopped, we were surrounded by men and boys who see very few foreigners in their lives. We then did something I'm sure few foreigners do. We stayed in the bazaars until nightfall in order to be able to see what they looked like at night. The flickering bluish light from many of the shops comes from the neon lights they use. Everything now looked much more mysterious than it did in the daylight, although, frankly, the shops were selling items as unmysterious as painted wooden chests for household storage and even bedding for the home.
We went to a belt shop. These are beautiful belts that they make there. You can see them in color, perhaps, of blues and reds and greens.
As I wandered around the belt shop, I saw that the owner made not only regular belts, but he seemed to be a specialist in gun belts. He was fitting bullet clips of 5 bullets each into loops, which would hold them for the future owner. Here in Arabia, out in the desert, no man would be without a jimbia or a gun.
And his clips would have to fit exactly, and they're being measured that way, those little belts. And the loops are made to fit just exactly that gun clip.
This is similar to how in our Wild West days, the men would carry guns. But the difference is that here, the gun holsters were in brilliant colors, including blue.
It was really something. Now, everyone here smokes the hookah, the water pipe. Now, the tobacco is up in the top. It goes down through the water in the base, comes up through a long tube, and they say it's very, very cool. Now, the tobacco, as it is in that little pocket up there, in that little container, has hot coals on top of it. And everywhere you go, this happens to be in an office, you'll see the hot coals on top of the leaf tobacco. Well, we went off into the bazaars, and I got the gentleman who was with us to try to do some bargaining. Hardly anybody speaks English there, you know, in the bazaars. And he was going to do some bargaining and see whether he could get one of those hookah water pipes for me. Now, first he said, how about that big one? I was filming. I was horrified. I thought, I hope he doesn't buy that one, because I could just imagine trying to find a place for that. Now, that's a water pipe. Beats a cigarette holder. There's nothing fanciness. We said, no, one of the less expensive ones and the less elaborate ones, we've got to lug it home by plane. So here's the one that he almost bought, or he wanted to buy for me, and I'm glad he didn't. It was rather expensive, too. That would have cost about $100. He started bargaining for the other one over there, and I was wondering whether he's going to make the bargain for us, because they love to bargain there. I've kept this hookah pipe, which we got in Saudi Arabia, around the house because I've always thought it might be handy to have this around. If one of our guests tells us that his doctor has told him to stay away from tobacco, he could always use this and say, well, doctor, I stayed away as far as I could. I got this far away.
We hope you enjoyed your visit to Jeddah with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you when we present our next episode. Good night, everyone.
Good night.